You're listening to the Membership Geeks podcast, bringing you proven practical tips and advice from the leading experts on growing a successful membership business.
Well, hello there. I'm Mike Morrison, your host for the show. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for joining me for another round of proven practical tips and advice on growing your membership business. And today, we're doing something we haven't done in quite a while. It's been years, and that is to dip into the archives of over 9 years of the Membership Geeks podcast. 9 years. We just celebrated our 400th episode a few weeks ago, and that is a lot of membership advice. And the thing is, the way that we've run this podcast, the topics that we've chosen, they've always been evergreen subjects. You know, we've never been one of those shows, or indeed one of those blogs or anything like that. Any content we put out has never been kind of jumping on the latest bandwagon or something that's happening in the news. And so it never really goes out of relevancy. A lot of the stuff that I was teaching all the way back in 2015 when this podcast very first started is still as relevant now in 2024 as it was back then. And it used to be like 3 or 4 years ago that people would discover the podcast for the very first time and they'd binge listen through 100 or so episodes. But obviously, the longer this show runs, the harder it is to do that. I don't expect anyone to binge listen through 9 years worth of me talking about memberships. But the downside of that is a lot of the great stuff that we put out might end up getting missed. So unless you have a reason to very, very specifically go hunting for a particular topic, there's some gold that you are likely missing out on. And so a couple of times a year, what we've always liked to do here on the Membership Geeks podcast is go into the vault, handpick a few episodes from years gone by and bring them back to your attention. It also gives me an opportunity to either update my thinking or add some insights on stuff that's maybe changed since then, or just to reiterate and reinforce the core messages and the core lessons that episode covers. So every time we dip into the vault, we always do a run of 3 episodes. So today's episode and the next 2 are going to be a venture into the archives with some hand-selected episodes that I think it's well worth you listening to. And if you've been around for years and years and you heard the episode that was, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, then this is a good refresher for you because chances are you've not committed it to memory. But if you are more new to the show, then this is your opportunity to get some of those insights that we shared earlier on in the podcast's existence. I love doing this because it's great for me because I get to listen to some of those older episodes too, which, as a podcaster, you rarely go back years and years and listen to the episodes that you put out. So I hope you enjoy this little dive down into the archives, this little venture back down memory lane with a few hand-picked episodes of the Membership Geeks podcast. Today, I'm going all the way back to 2017 to an episode that I did about the reasons why I dislike the closed-door membership model. Now, this was a kind of controversial episode that I did back then. Now in 2017, this whole gimmick, this whole approach of having the doors closed to your membership all of the time, it was more of a gimmick. It was being taught in more of a gimmicky way. That's why I just naturally said the word gimmick. It was something that was really just taught as a way of the main people who were teaching this to kind of say, oh, hey, we've got this new crazy new strategy that is super secret that is going to put you ahead of the competition. But times have changed significantly since 2017. And the longer that people have had to actually see the closed-door membership model in practice, the more reasoned an approach has emerged. It is something which has some validity in certain circumstances, but also it was back then very much presented as this kind of magic formula, this crazy, unique new way of ensuring that you get members flocking to your membership. And the reality has just turned out very, very different. However, the reasoning that I give against the closed-door membership model, these aren't reasons that are talked about enough. These aren't things that are considered enough, and it's attacking things from a different angle if you are thinking of having your membership closed, or if your doors are closed already and you're realizing that it's restricting what you're doing, then this will hopefully give you a little bit of food for thought. In many ways, launching a brand new membership site is one of the biggest marketing opportunities you'll ever experience as a membership owner. So it makes sense why some people advocate for constantly closing and reopening your membership in order to recapture that opportunity over and over again, but it doesn't quite work as simply as that. So the closed door strategy is one that gained a lot of traction in certain circles online, and I always try and bring a sense of balance, a sense of reason, and give the things you might not have considered, the things that the people who are pushing this strategy aren't telling you, either because they don't want you to know or they just don't understand. Now, to be clear, when I talk about closed door and launching and all of that, I'm not talking about that first launch of a brand new membership. What this means when I talk closed door is having your membership closed off to enrollment. So rather than having it so people can join all round the year and promoting it like you promote any service or product, you only open the doors during specific windows of time in the year. And as I said, there are certain circumstances where the strategy is perfectly fine, and in some cases where it's preferable. But there are some things you need to know. And that's what I dived into all the way back in episode 93, considering this is episode 400 and something. So this was a while ago, but my opinions on it I suppose they have matured. I'm certainly not as aggressively against the model, and that is because the main issue that I always had with how the closed door model was taught was because it was positioned as kind of a marketing gimmick. Like, this is something that is going to be the way of selling your membership, and any other form of marketing, just forget about that. You don't need to do that. Everyone should have a closed door membership. And it was really sold in what I considered a misleading and a sleazy way. Now, that's not as much the case anymore. So certainly my opinions on the closed door model have changed accordingly, because now more people, when they do close the doors to their membership, they're doing it for the right reasons. They're not doing it because they've been convinced by some quote-unquote guru that this is the way of doing it, right? But the things that I talk about in this episode are still relevant if you're thinking of having a closed door model, or if your doors are already closed and you're realizing that there are some issues. So without any further ado, we're going to dive in to episode 93, all the way back from the 19th of April, 2017, with the 5 reasons that I dislike the closed door membership model. Here we go. So this is the marketing strategy that's gained a lot of traction, a lot of popularity in certain circles online over recent years, whereby rather than just having your membership out there and promoting it and marketing it the way that you would market pretty much any sort of service or product, rather than doing that, you put on this whole act of closing the doors, limiting registrations, and only opening up for new enrollments and new members to join your membership at specific periods of the year. Now, some people swear by this model, and without question, there are certain circumstances where I think it's perfectly fine. If the subject that your membership covers is one where you have a natural end date. So one example that comes to mind is a student of ours who had a membership that was all about helping people get their college applications in order. Now, obviously, that is a very time-specific sort of membership in terms of when people are actually going to need it. So it makes sense then to have natural start and end dates in terms of when enrollment will be available for your membership. If you're teaching a program, so if you have, maybe it's a course or maybe it's a library of content, and rather than just dumping people in there and leaving them to their own devices, you actually want to give hands-on support and take people through step by step a set out program where everyone is moving through at the same pace. You're giving little check-ins, maybe you're doing some live coaching, some hands-on stuff. That sort of program, again, it makes sense to have a model whereby you have limited enrollment periods. So your door is closed, people can't enroll until you open the door for a very specific launch period. That makes sense. If you have a seasonal business, again, that might be something where you have specific periods of the year where you're closed and then certain periods where you're open. Or if you're genuinely only able to be there for members at certain times of the year. So maybe you know that every winter, so the last 3 months of the year, or, quarter 3 or quarter 4, whenever, you know that you are not going to be around, that things in other areas of your business are going to dominate your schedule. And as such, you don't want to have new members joining during that time because you won't be there to give them the sort of support and access that you would like. Then again, closing down your membership and then reopening it at a better time can work and it can make sense. So I'm not against this model completely. I'm just not a fan of this approach when it is used for purely marketing purposes. If closing the doors and opening them again, then closing them, then opening and closing them and opening, if that makes sense for the topic you're trying to teach, for the way you want to teach it, and for the audience you want to serve, if that sort of model works well for those things, great. But if you're only doing it because you think that it is the best way of getting new members, it's purely a sales and marketing tactic, I'm really not a fan. Now, before we dig into this even further, I want to say that this podcast episode is brought to you by membersiteacademy.com, the number one resource for anyone looking to plan, build, launch, and grow a successful membership website. When I tell you that the membersiteacademy.com is the number one place to be, that it has all of the courses, resources, community support, and all that good stuff that you need to make your membership successful, I'm not telling you because someone's thrown a bunch of money at me to say that. I'm telling you because it's our baby, because we built it, and because we're in there day after day helping hundreds and hundreds of membership site owners just like you to become successful. So check it out at membersiteacademy.com. And if you hadn't guessed from the overall tone of this episode, membersiteacademy.com is open anytime to join. No false scarcity, no fake launches or any of that nonsense. Just head on over to membersiteacademy.com and jump right in. All right, so getting back to this whole open and closed launch cycle as a marketing tactic, there is no doubt that it works for some people. There's a lot of people out there who'll be quite happy to tell you that this is the number one way of running a successful membership site. First and foremost, that should be your red flag, because there is no one-size-fits-all strategy or approach to building a successful membership. And when you typically look closer at the sort of sites or at the sort of people who claim that this is such a highly effective strategy, what you'll find is that usually they are backed by an army of affiliates and a huge email list and ad budget, without which they simply wouldn't be able to make this strategy work. Because the truth is, when you're using this kind of launch strategy, open, close all the time to promote your membership, the cost of acquisition for your members skyrockets. You have to put a lot into running ads. You have to put a lot into paying affiliates. And essentially, it gives you the worst of both worlds. And that's the first big reason why I'm not a fan of this sort of model. You get the worst of both worlds. You have the pressure and the costs of a big launch campaign without the financial payoff that you would typically get from the sort of things this sort of strategy is usually used for. The whole open, close thing, or the whole launch strategy, is typically used when you have a course that'll cost $1,000 or $2,000. And so when you have that sort of high ticket item that you're selling, the fact that you have to pay affiliates for all of their referrals, the fact that you have to spend lots of money on ads isn't as big an issue because you're selling a $1,000 or a $2,000 course. When you're selling a membership site, where typically you're not going to be charging any more than maybe $50 to $60 per month, or if you're selling annual memberships, you're maybe going to be charging between $400 and $500 at most. That's not a high ticket item to the degree of an online course, and as such, you are getting the worst of both worlds. You get all the pressure and all the costs and all the high intense build up, the risk of doing a big launch, but you're not getting that huge financial payoff. So it really is the worst of both worlds. That's one of the main reasons I'm not a fan.
The other reason I'm not a big fan of this model, so reason number 2, is that it typically screws up your community dynamic. Because what happens is you run your launch and then you get this initial influx of new members. Then you close the doors and there's no fresh blood coming into the community for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, however long your doors are closed for. So your community starts to stagnate, people start to drift away. People notice and they pick up on the fact that there's no new members coming around, and so they start to slip away, to log in less frequently, to participate less frequently, because there's no real buzz or forward momentum taking place within your community. Then when you open the doors, you get this big rush of new members coming in, but all of these people coming in are brand new. And so they're all going to be introducing themselves. They're all going to be asking the same kind of beginner level questions. And you end up with this huge divide between this influx of new members and the guys who've been around for months and months, and sometimes even years. Now, this gives you what I call the January gym effect. Any of you guys who frequently go to the gym, and for any of you who have met me, you will know I'm not one of those guys, but I have been to a gym once or twice. If you go to a gym frequently, most people who are regular gym users will avoid going as much as possible during January, because they know that that's when all of the people who are doing their New Year's resolutions will be taking up all of the machines. So you have that influx of new recruits for the gym who just annoy everybody. They're doing everything wrong, they're not wiping down the machines, they're not following gym etiquette, and they're generally just making a nuisance of themselves. That's what happens in your community when you have this sort of launch model. All these new members come in, and the way in which they behave, because they're behaving like newbies, that's what they are. But that can often rub your more established long-term members up the wrong way, so they don't bother showing up during your launch period, which means that the new guys coming in, they're saying hello, they're introducing themselves, they're asking questions, and they're getting nothing back, because the only other people in there at that time are other new members, and maybe you and some people on your team. That just turns into a vicious cycle where the only activity in your forum ends up being new members coming in, introducing themselves, having a little flurry of activity, and then everything dies out. And your forum or your Facebook group becomes a ghost town until the next launch. And the same thing happens. Then your community is a ghost town. So reason number 2 of why I'm not a big fan of this sort of closed door marketing strategy is the effect that it has on the community. That January gym effect can totally kill any community spirit or any momentum that you have in your community. Reason number 3 why I typically dislike this sort of strategy is that it's simply lazy marketing. I've been around this space long enough to know that the more tricks and the more nonsense you have to use, the more likely it is because you're masking a mediocre product. I've actually heard it said that if you don't use this sort of scarcity in your marketing, then people have no reason to buy. How about just having a kick-ass product? Surely that is the reason people will buy, right? If your product is actually good, people will buy it. If you've built trust, people will buy. If you've nurtured the relationship with your audience, people will buy. You shouldn't need to have to put them into high pressure buying decisions, to have people taking out credit cards to join your membership or to buy that lifetime deal that's only available with all of the bonuses during your launch period and all that nonsense. Shouldn't be putting people in these sort of high pressure decisions, because that's not good for sustaining long-term relationships with your members. And you need those long-term relationships if you want people to stick around and continue paying you month after month, year after year. This is vital to the success of your membership. Simply lazy marketing. If you're only doing this because you can't figure out how to organically get people to join your membership, or because your membership site simply does not sell itself, and that's really not good for the long-term success of your membership. Reason number 4 for why I really don't like this model is that it quite often attracts the wrong kind of member. More often than not, people will join memberships because they have a problem to solve, a goal they want to reach, a transformation they want to see. Now think about this. If someone is willing to wait 3 months, 6 months, or even 12 months for you to open your doors, until they actually start pursuing that goal, how serious or committed do you think they're going to be to getting results? How seriously are they taking this problem? If it's not been compelling enough for them to seek an alternative solution rather than just sit around twiddling their thumbs waiting for you to open your doors. If I'm hungry, and I'm very often hungry, and I come across your restaurant and I read your menu and everything about it just has my mouth watering, and I can't wait to come in and to fill my belly and to gorge on what I'm sure will be the delicious meal you will serve. But there's a sign on your door saying, "We are closed until next week." I'm not going to sit in your doorway and starve to death waiting for you to open the door. Of course not. I'm going to wander down the street and I'm going to find somewhere else that can feed me, somewhere else that may actually have nicer meals on the menu. And even if they don't necessarily elicit the same response that your restaurant had, maybe they don't have my mouth watering quite as much, I'm still going to eat there rather than waiting for you to come around and open your door. If your membership product is good enough, if your membership product is solid enough, if the problems or the goals or the results that people want from your membership are compelling enough, they will not wait for you to open their doors. The people who are willing to wait clearly are not motivated enough, and that lack of motivation leads to shorter member life cycles. It leads to them not sticking around as long, having a lower customer lifetime value, and increasing your churn. So, number 4 reason for why I'm not a huge fan of this model is it attracts the wrong kind of member. And the 5th, final, and overall ultimate reason why I think that this sort of model kind of sucks is that whenever you're using this sort of false scarcity, it's not done to benefit the member. I said at the beginning of this episode that there are certain circumstances where I think opening and closing is perfectly fine. But all of those circumstances relate to what is best for the member. If I know my membership can help someone get a result in just 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, however long, who am I to delay that? Who am I to stand in the way of somebody making a positive transformation in their lives, in their business, simply because I can't figure out any other way of marketing my membership site? If you're taking this approach because it fits the topic, if you're taking this approach because it fits the way that you know is best to teach this topic and get people results, if it fits the market, if it fits your member, if it's done because it benefits the member, then great. If you're doing it because some internet marketing guru told you that it's the only way you can bring in new members, or because you haven't put in the time and effort to figure out how to actually grow your membership organically, then I'm sorry, but I think this approach really, really sucks. Now, it's important to point out that we've actually tested this model against having your membership open all of the time. So we've split tested all the traffic that was going to the sales pages of a number of 6 and 7 figure membership sites that we've been directly involved in. Half of that traffic went to a page which enabled people to enroll right away. Half of it went to a page which put them on a wait list and had the door closed for 3 months. Now, we ran that experiment for several months, and then having given it enough time after the experiment was run for us to actually observe what happened in terms of how long people stuck around and so on, we then crunched that data. And what we found was that yes, having the doors closed and then opening them did overall result in a few more members than those sites had actually brought in organically during that same period. So there were more members, but the cost to actually get those members, the cost of acquisition, was far higher with the open-close model. And as well as that, those members who joined in that launch period versus the ones who just joined organically, they did not stick around for as long as the organic members did. And the members that are brought in, the cost of acquiring those members was far higher because there was ad spend involved, and the retention wasn't as good. So overall, you're paying more money for members who don't stick around as long. And this isn't even going into the level of stress and the level of pressure and all the extra resources and work that was involved in running the launch promotions too. So this isn't just me ranting and giving my personal opinions and anecdotal stuff. This is based on real world data as well. Now, don't get me wrong, the headline figure of being able to say we got however many 100 members or however many 1,000 members in just 72 hours, it certainly looks impressive. But when you look closer, it never tells the full story. And I know that listeners of this show are smart enough to see through that sort of internet marketing style BS bragging. So hopefully I've made my case a little bit if you've been on the fence, or at the very least, hopefully I've just inspired a little bit of food for thought.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that little trip down memory lane, that little venture into the vault, and have kind of picked something up from me sharing reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of the closed door membership model. Perhaps it's given you new perspectives, perhaps it's reinforced something you've been thinking already, or perhaps it's actually helped you to really reaffirm the fact that this model is right for your particular circumstance, your audience, your topic. And if it is, fantastic. We have very successful people inside membershipacademy.com who have the closed door model. We have very successful people who have the open door model. We got successful people who went from closed to open and people who went from open to closed. So I'm not prejudiced against any approach to enrollment. I do favor always being open. The most successful memberships in the world are open all of the time. But there are definitely circumstances where the model makes sense. It's just important that we don't get carried away with the hype that some people use to sell this concept. And instead, look at both sides, look at the pros and cons, and make a reasoned strategical decision as to whether this is a model that is right for your particular circumstances. That is it from me today. Next time on the Membership Geeks podcast, we'll be venturing once more into the archives with another fantastic episode from the vault. So hopefully you'll join me then. If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Membership Geeks podcast, we invite you to check out membershipacademy.com. Membership Academy is the original membership about memberships, and it's the essential resource for anyone at any stage of starting, growing, and running a successful online membership business. Whether you're still trying to figure out what your idea is going to be and you need some help making it a reality, or whether your website is already up and running and you're looking for ways to grow and attract new members, then Membership Academy can help you to get to the next level. Not only do you get access to our step-by-step membership roadmap, our extensive training library, and exclusive member-only discount and tools, you'll also become part of our supportive, active community of membership owners that will help you along the way in your journey with feedback, encouragement, and advice. All of this and more make Membership Academy the #1 place to be for anyone looking to start, manage, and grow a successful membership business. Check it out and join the community at membershipacademy.com.